It's an image embedded into our collective minds, a happy marriage, kids, both parents present. But nowadays, this is closer to a fairy tale than reality. But here's the truth, less than 18% of people today actually grew up in a two-parent household where two biological parents were present. We're told that this is progress, that families look different now, that this is freedom, empowerment. But what if I told you the destruction of the nuclear household wasn't an accident? What if it was an intentional part of the one and only agenda keeping humanity controlled? And this is quite literally advanced sorcery being used against humans right now. In this series, which this video is going to be part of, I'm going to be breaking down how every single modern crisis is rooted in the war against the masculine and feminine energies, aka the depolarization agenda. Today we're going to start off with the complete esoteric breakdown as to how and why the destruction of the nuclear family household is happening right now. If you don't know me, hi, my name is Ira. I'm a metaphysics researcher and psychic, and the information I'm bringing to you today I have channeled and also confirmed through my research. I've actually been working with the law of duality for many years now. So I bring this to you with an open heart, and I ask you that you keep an open mind and watch to the end of the video so you can form an opinion and let me know in the comments. So we're going to dive into the principle of gender so you can understand the root of everything, right? So the principle of gender is one of the 7 hermetic principles. If you don't know what hermeticism is, I have so many different videos about it, but it's basically a super ancient philosophy that stems from Egypt, and it has been the foundation to so many different ancient traditions that are even seen now today. So this is more famously known as the law of duality, and it talks about the 2 primordial forces that create reality. So nothing is above this law, right? We have right here God, or the universe, the source of everything, the all, right? The all is mind. And then we have the principle of gender as to how God expresses itself into this physical form, or into these different planes of existence as well, not just the physical and material realm, but all of these different planes of reality. So the best way to explain it is that God, or the source of all creation, let's draw this and use as a prism, right? We have a prism right here. When it becomes existent, it uses the masculine and feminine energies in order to create all realities. So in order for that source or that mind to manifest itself into creation, it needs both masculine and feminine energies. And the reason I use the prism right here is because prisms, when you shine light into them, it refracts into the 7-color spectrum, creating a refraction of light, right? A duality. So the interesting thing about this concept is that the masculine and feminine energies are not sex. So they're absolutely not sex. You want to think of the feminine energy almost as the creative force, right? It's that womb of creation. We're gonna put right here, feminine energy. So it is the womb of creation. I'm writing it with blue because it's represented in Hermeticism by the water element, because it is the creativity, the flow. It is where intuition comes from, right? That creative, the womb of creation. So we have here in Mexico, they say womb, they call it matriz, matrix, for a reason, right? So this is the matrix itself. And then you have the masculine, which takes the feminine energy, takes this creative force and orders it into reality. So this would be represented as the fire element, because it is order, it is action, it is that will that takes this matrix and codes it into reality. So it is the coder of the matrix. So as you can see, it is not about sex, it is about 2 primordial energies that come together in order to create everything that you are seeing in existence, including you, and including everything that makes you you, okay? So nothing is above this law except the God mind, the all, right? The universe, source, whatever you want to call it. So let's talk further about these 2 energies here. So you most famously know the yin and yang symbol, right? With the yin being the feminine energy and with the yang being the masculine energy. Now the feminine is dark, not because it is bad, but because it is the internal world, okay? It is the unknown. It is the portal to the spiritual. It is the intuition, creativity, emotions, and most importantly, the feminine energy is the heart. okay? The one with the vision, with the ideas, etc. There's so many more different aspects to the feminine energy, but we're gonna leave it here for now. So the masculine energy, if the feminine is the internal, the masculine is the external. And when I say external, I also mean it is the, instead of the heart, it is the mind. And I don't mean the subconscious mind, I mean the conscious, right? Because although it is 5% of your reality, it is super powerful. It is the one that penetrates the feminine energy, the subconscious mind, in order to create, right? So thanks to the masculine energy, thanks to the conscious mind, you can have a say in what you actually create in your reality. This is why your masculine is your will. It is your action as well. It is the one that takes order, right? That orders this energy right here inside of you into reality. It is the one that also is logic, and most importantly, because it is your external and because it's your conscious mind, it is also your ego. Now, the ego is not really bad. It is your identity. So if you didn't have one, you literally wouldn't be able to tell me apart from you. But it is your external self, right? Oh, self-love, okay? So this is your self-love, and this is your love for others. So the feminine is your heart, connects you to the collective. The masculine is your individual expression, connects you to your identity and your individual self. So according to ancient mysticism, when these two energies are working in harmony, so they're in a nice marriage within you, whether you're a man or a woman, because you have both, you will be in heaven. Heaven is a state of mind where you are most connected to God, right? To the oneness, to the source of everything. Therefore, you have more conscious control over reality creation, okay? When you have these two energies working together, when you have your heart and when you have your mind aligned. And by the way, I know I said this was not about sex, but the two bodies, the female and male body, were created after these two energies, because in order to reproduce, which is a form of creation, we need these two energies. So this is why the female body represents the feminine energy, although both bodies have both energies, right? She is the womb. She can bring life from the spiritual world. She's that portal to the spiritual, right? She is also more emotional, most women, right? They're more in tune with the emotions. And this is also proved scientifically. And the male body is stronger externally because they are meant to be protectors. So both sexes represent these two energies in physical form. This is why in the Bible it says we are made in the image of God. So you can see the two sexes are made after these two energies. Now let me tell you something very important. When you are having a harmony of these two energies within you, you create heaven on earth. But when you have a disharmony of these two energies inside of you, you create hell. If you end up going too much into one extreme, let's say you go too in the feminine energy, instead of order, right, and flow, which is also the feminine energy, instead of flow, you will end up creating chaos, right? Chaos, emotional dysregulation, lack of boundaries because you're missing the discernment right here, lack of action and accountability as well. So you can see this as the victim mindset. And if you go too in the masculine, instead of order, you're going to have control, a life led by the ego instead of, led by the emotions, which is the other extreme. So when you have these energies working harmoniously inside of you, you have more conscious control over your reality because you are closer to that godly state of being, right? Like that connection to God. Now, when you go to an extreme is because you are neglecting the other side. So let's say you are going too in the feminine energy. This is considered as the archetype of Luciferian energy. Why Lucifer? Because Lucifer fell from the sky. It is false light, okay? So you go too in the internal world, you become emotional dysregulation or emotional chaos, let's say, right? Because you're lacking order. So flow goes into chaos. You could also have spiritual psychosis, happens quite a lot on this end. Love for others, right, goes to an extreme, so lack of boundaries. And they have lack of boundaries because they are lacking the discernment, right? The ability to set your boundaries, which the masculine actually gives you. Lack of identity as well. They don't have a really good identity. they people please, they try to fit in, they try, they get on with the latest trends, or they simply don't know who they are. And one really big thing here is also the victim mindset or the martyr, right? A lot of these people, they become emotional manipulators or put themselves in this moral high ground where they have this moral god complex where they feel they're doing good by humanity, but then they bully those who are not thinking like them. So you can see this quite a lot in this world. There's so much more here, but let's just put here is really emotional chaos, and they also don't take accountability, therefore they don't take action, and they don't actually create things in their external world. Now, I'm not gonna write more here because there's some mic right there, but anyways, when you go to in the extreme of the masculine energy, you create Satan, right? So Satan is when the mind goes to an extreme. That's why Satan has super long horns, and you also have Satan for Saturn, which is the most rigid and disciplined planet, right? It's very cold. So here you go too into the external, disconnecting from the heart, therefore you become dominated by the ego. Since you're really in the external, you also become consumed by greed, you become cold, right? You're disconnected, and because you're so disconnected from the heart, you could also become an abuser. Because Satan is disconnected from flow, order becomes control, and it's no longer that divine masculine order, that discernment, right? It becomes control, which you can see in people's identity. I don't know if you've noticed this, but your ego tries to protect you in very toxic ways as a way to control, right? Because your ego is a part of your masculine energy. Now, when people are really in this extreme, their ego does everything to protect them from their pain by controlling everything externally. You can see this as law with narcissists, and here you can see it with codependency or borderline personality disorder as well, although we're not talking about that. So here, self-love becomes self-centeredness, and this obviously is the disconnection from the collective. So you start to only care about yourself. We're gonna get into more into how these two work together. Let's get into the interesting part about the family dynamic though. In a family, everybody inside has masculine and feminine energies, right? But this is the mother archetype, okay? And this is the father archetype. How do people gain their energetic imprint? How do they gain how their masculine and feminine energies behave in their life? Through their mother's and father's energetic imprint. The father's grounded presence represents the safety, the discipline, the ability to take action and structure the person's life. To a child, he represents the inner masculine energy. The mother's emotional presence teaches emotional connection, love, compassion, expression. She actually embodies the inner feminine inside the child. And together they form a living energetic template for this child's inner world. So when both parents are present and are energetically aligned, they form a very good subconscious blueprint for that child to live the human experience. A strong inner masculine to build and protect, and a healthy feminine so they can express and create. This gives the child a perfect blueprint in order to consciously create reality where they are individuals, right? And they're expressing themselves, they're expressing their gifts, their talents, their individuality, while still being connected to the collective, while still having that connection to the spiritual as well, and being able to dive into the inner world and having a beautiful duality between the internal and external world. But when this balance is broken, when a parent is emotionally unavailable, when a parent is depolarized, or when a parent is simply not present, this child's inner structure collapses. And that's when the real damage starts, because this child grows up to be an adult, and either they're too in their masculine energy, where they start to abuse people, where they try to control their external circumstances, where they don't even want to look at themselves internally, where they, self-center, or this person doesn't even know how to emotionally regulate themselves. They are lacking their boundaries. They just can't create consciously. And it's not because they're broken, but because their inner masculine and feminine energies are at war. Single parent households are at an all-time high. More children are actually born out of wedlock than in it. And most of the time, we all know this, people stay with their mothers, right? We see very little children staying with their fathers. Most of the time they stay with their mothers. What does that mean? This means that most of these people are missing the father archetype inside of them, meaning they're gonna go into this extreme of the feminine, right? Where they go into emotional chaos, where they lack the boundaries, where they lack the structure or the identity to create their reality, and they go into this victim mindset, right? I'm not saying all of them, but because of this energetic blueprint right here and the missing father archetype, most people are likely to go to this other extreme. And we can see this so clearly with the research on fatherless homes actually having 63% of suicidal rates, 85% of behavioral disorders. This is right here, right? The emotional chaos, and also double the mental health risks. But why are they doing this? You see, when somebody is at the extreme of the feminine energy, they lack identity and they are emotionally dysregulated, which is a perfect recipe for mental manipulation. Now, this may hurt some people's feelings, but the truth is that when people are really in the feminine energy and the Luciferian archetype, they are way easier to control because they are in emotional chaos. They don't have identity, so you can easily tell them who they are and they will try to fit in. They're also lacking boundaries and they're looking to become the martyr, right? To become important through a social cause, etc. But that is the dynamic between these two extremes, because as you can see, in order to have that heavenly state, these two need to work together. But just because they are in balance doesn't mean that they're not working together. Actually, the masculine energy uses the feminine energy still to create reality, even when they are at an imbalance, even when they're at their fall of consciousness. And this is what these elites are doing. The people responsible for this agenda are in this extreme where they create hierarchies that are impossible to get to, right? They keep everything to themselves. This is the self-centeredness. They don't have the connection to the feminine energy. They don't have the connection to the emotions, to the collective, right? The fall of consciousness of the masculine energy, which is the Satan energy, relies on their ego. They are dominated by their ego, actually. They rely on the external world. They're greedy and they do seek control, but they cannot control if they don't have a submissive population to control. This is why they purposely seek to put people in this extreme, into the false light, into all these different movements that use emotional manipulation, right? All these different movements that are usually fighting for a cause, but they're not actually fighting for a cause. They're just making people more angry. Now, there are so many different ways that they are depolarizing people right now. For example, we have the LGBTQ agenda, which I know so many people are not gonna want to hear, but it is evident that they are pushing this onto children and onto the masses at the moment. It is quite literally a agenda being pushed in the media in order to cause gender identity and also sexual identity crisis on people, which would put them quite literally right here, right? Lacking the identity inside. It is confusing people about their identity, and when they don't know where to direct their sexual energy, which I do speak about in this video right here, by the way, which I really recommend you to watch because it is honestly an amazing breakdown of this agenda. But anyways, when you mess with people's sexual identity or gender identity, you start to depolarize them. They don't have a direction to give this energy to. And being specially pushed onto children, it is one of the most destructive agendas that we can see right now. And it is being done through our foods. Why do you think that testosterone levels have gone down in men? We're not gonna get too much into the LGBTQ because I'm gonna make a whole video about it. I already have a video which I just told you guys about. But the next part is the hypersexuality, right? Hypersexuality is a fall of the Luciferian energy because feminine energy is the sacral chakra, it is the sexual energy, and when it is out of control, people lose their spiritual power because the sexual energy is quite literally your creative force. If you don't have a direction for it, you are just losing your power, right? So when you are hypersexual, when you watch too much porn, I don't know if you've noticed the men who watch a lot of porn, they lose testosterone and they literally become more feminine. You can see it by their voices. And hypersexuality is literally everywhere. You can see it with most of these influencers being examples for the youth, yet they have OnlyFans or they're doing sex work and they're trying to normalize it. We have a mass hypersexualization in music, in the media, in our entertainment, right? And this heavily desensitizes people, and especially the youth. And once again, putting everybody here, including men, right? This is why they also target men's testosterone levels, which you've seen drastically drop. They put them all here at the extreme of the feminine. Also, hookup culture being promoted as liberation. You have also the red pill. You have also the war of men and women, right? With women drastically hating men, these radical feminists, right? And also the red pill community, all these men that hate women. With politics also taking people to extremes. Why do you think you have the Republican and the Democrat? They're literally blue and red for a reason. The way the system is also set up, where people have multiple jobs to even make a living, to even survive. They don't have time to have children, obviously, or the resources, or if they do, they never see them. And with the other part as well, where the media tells you that you are a victim, that you are oppressed, especially with the minority communities, when everybody has the chance at making something of themselves, but they don't want you to believe that. Because when you believe that you are a victim, when you believe that you are oppressed, you don't take the chances. You don't make anything out of yourself, and you stay in this end. The way these people have maneuvered everything, as you can see, with literal energetic sorcery, is so intelligent, but at the same time is so demonic in a sense. These people don't need to chain you up and visibly, physically oppress you. They don't. All they need to do is have you believe that you are already jailed, and you will be. Of course, I will make individual videos about all the topics I just listed, because that is quite literally part of what's going on right now. But I want to put a really huge emphasis here. I am not at all demonizing or putting down single mothers or single parent households. I am blaming the system that set it up that way. It is so important to raise awareness on the energetic blueprint of family foundations, because this is literally what creates your reality. You right now have an energetic blueprint that is actively creating your entire reality, making everything happen for you, okay? And it all comes from the way that you were raised. It is so important to work on your masculine and feminine energy. So obviously my entire channel is about this. It is so important to work on your masculine and feminine energy, because so many people talk about all these different laws, like the law of attraction, the law of assumption, all these different things. These are also modern laws, but nobody talks about the masculine and feminine energy and how deep this law goes into the entire formation of reality. So I encourage you to actually look at yours, to see where you are here, and to start working on these energies, because I promise you, once you start to really work on these energies, you will start to reach this state where you will gain conscious control over your reality. And that's what they don't want you to do. That they don't want you to have that. They don't want you to take your power back, because when you have these two aligned, you take your power back. You start to create what you desire. You stop being controlled by the things that these people throw at us. So it is time that we all come together as a community and we start to actively honor these two energies as the foundations to the systems that we should have as a society. Well, this was my presentation. This is something that I've been wanting to create for so long, because it's really the only agenda that exists, the only one. Like, if you ever think of all these different conspiracy theories, they all come down to this agenda, the depolarization agenda. So if you've seen the damage of this and you want to also restore it in yourself, of course my page is for you. But besides that, I actually want you to comment below what your thoughts on this is, and I want you to stick around for the next episode, because I'm gonna be breaking all of this down and the ways that it's being done, so you can see it and not fall victim to it, okay? Thank you so much for watching. My name is Ira Morphy, and I hope to see you on the next video.